Before the fame, before Ziggy, before the chameleonic reinventions that defined an era, there was just a quiet, curious boy from Bromley named David Jones. Long before anyone had heard the name David Bowie, he was already drawn to the stage. And like many great performers, his first audience wasn't in a stadium, it was his neighbors. The earliest remembered public performance from young David happened sometime around Christmas in the early 1950s. He couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. He and a school friend, a boy named Smith, went around the Bromley area singing Christmas carols not for pocket money, but to raise funds for a local charity, the Bromley Blind Club. They managed to collect 2 shillings and tuppence. It was small, but it mattered. Even then, David was connecting with people through music. By the late 1950s, his love for performing had only grown. In 1958, David joined the St. Mary's Church Choir, where he sang alongside 2 boys who would remain close to him for years to come, George Underwood and Jeffrey McCormack. That same summer, during a scout camp trip to the Isle of Wight, David and George gave one of their first real performances, this time in front of their peers, gathered around a campfire at Corfe Scout Camp near Shawfleet. David brought along a ukulele and a homemade 1-string bass that he had built with his old schoolmate Dudley Chapman back in junior school. George played acoustic guitar. Together, they performed songs by Lonnie Donegan, the king of British skiffle, Gamblin' Man, Puttin' on the Style, 16 Tons, and the Ballad of Davy Crockett. There was no spotlight, no applause, just firelight, a few chords, and the sound of a voice finding its way. But in 1962, everything began to change. David had just turned 15 when he formed his first real band, the Conrads. He started out playing tenor saxophone, having only picked up the instrument earlier that year. The group's lineup was loose and ever-changing, but some early members included Neville Wills on guitar, Alan Dodds, and of course George Underwood, who sang and played guitar before leaving the group shortly after a falling out over a lineup change. That change came when drummer Dave Hadfield replaced Dave Crook, a move that upset George enough to walk away. Bowie, however, stayed. He was still known as Dave J at the time, a stage name borrowed from his middle name. His first real publicized gig with the Conrads happened on Saturday, June 16, 1962. It was held outside Bromley Technical High School during the school's annual PTA Fete, a local community event, not exactly glamorous, but important nonetheless. The Conrads were added to the lineup thanks to David's music teacher, Brian Lee, who saw promise in the young saxophonist. They set up on the front steps of the school and played a short set of rock and roll covers. But they ran overtime, and a teacher named Mr. Lane famously pulled the plug on their amps to get them off stage. Still, it was a real performance. Not a campfire, not a carol. This was scheduled, amplified, and public. It was the moment David Bowie stepped into the world of live music. The Kentish Times covered the event the following week under the headline, "Nearly 4,000 at School Fete." In their write-up, they described a continental-style cafe, where soft drinks were served as a group of young instrumentalists played music on guitars, saxophone, and drums. They even mentioned the band, though they got the name wrong, spelling it Conrads with a C instead of Conrads with a K. Later that year, the Conrads played a more serious gig at Coodham Parish Hall in Sevenoaks, Kent, on Saturday, November 17, 1962. The lineup had settled a bit, with Hadfield now fully taking charge of the group's direction. That night, they performed an astonishing 58-song set. David sang lead vocals on 8 songs, including a cover of Let's Dance by Chris Montez. That show, loud, long, probably chaotic, marked the true start of Bowie's journey as a performer. He was still far from famous, still just a teenager. But on that stage in that tiny parish hall, David Bowie the artist had taken root. And though there would be many bands, many names, and many failures ahead, that first gig was proof of something bigger. That even in the beginning, David Bowie knew exactly where he was headed, and he never looked back.